Hi guys, this is gsrandom.com and I'm here with the Sony Xperia XA2 Ultra for a full review. We're dealing here with a pretty big phablet that debuted at CES 2018 with the XA2, and it's ideal for binge watching and gaming. This 6-incher is priced at around $450 and it comes in silver, black, blue or gold, and it's a bit of a selfie machine. It has two front cameras and one has optical image stabilization, but about that later on. So Xperia XA2 Ultra at gsrandom.com. I'm going to talk about the design first and foremost. First thing I noticed, it's very rounded around the back, rounded around the sides, and rounded at the front side. It's like a football, you know, a football NFL ball. That's the vibe, around it all the way around. Certainly more rounded than the Xperia XA1 Ultra before it. Yes, it's massive. It weighs a pretty hefty 221 grams, and it measures a reasonable 9.5 millimeters. It's got the reasonably comfy buttons here, except for the little one for the camera. Those ones I can deal with, and I have to say that I'm loving the fact it's curved all the way. It makes you feel snuggle in the hand, so it snuggles well in your hand, fits perfectly, has a good grip. People who don't like big phones will be slightly let down. Somehow I was able to use it properly even with one hand, so thank God for the grip. Speaking of materials, you're dealing with glass at the front, aluminum on the sides, and polycarbonate at the back side. Here you can find the fingerprint scanner, and the phone has, as we've seen many times in the XA series, very narrow bezels, at least on the sides. Now, compared to the predecessor, it's 2 mm shorter and 1 mm thicker, plus 33 grams heavier. It's not a phone for people who want small handsets, that's for sure, but at least it has very good grip and it's comfy for me. Now let's talk about the screen. It's a 6-inch Full HD IPS LCD with narrow bezels. On paper were promised 500 nits, and interestingly, Sony hasn't switched to the 18:9 aspect in this range. It's a 16:9 device with Gorilla Glass protection. Now when it comes to the actual viewing experience, let's have a look. So this is our usual test video, and this is what it looks like. So I would have to say we're dealing with the colors that feel a bit cold. The panel is a bit white in my view. The white is too strong, the black is not that deep. Brightness is solid, quite high brightness. We got wide view angles, and the contrast is reasonable, although in the sunlight it could have been a bit better, especially for a screen that has so much white. At least it's immersive thanks to the narrower upper and bottom bezel. Okay, so we also did a bunch of tests, and let's see how those panned out. So we got them here. If you put the screen under the microscope, guess what? RGB stripes pixel arrangement. We also measured the brightness and achieved a top value of 541 lux units, which is great. It beats the Nokia 8 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, but scores below the Sony Xperia XA1 Ultra, which had a crazy 611 lux. Also below the Xiaomi Mi 6. Now, if you're expecting those special settings like, I don't know, True Motion, Clear Reality or so forth, it doesn't have them. It's not a flagship Xperia. All it has is brightness, adaptive brightness, sleep, smart backlight, these options for color gamut and contrast, off, standard and super vivid. I complained before about the cold colors. This can solve it. White balance with RGB sliders, font size, display size, system icons, and that's about it. No special tweaks, special motion and X-reality and other things like that. So a pretty solid screen overall, quite bright, but in the end the colors feel a bit cold. Now let's talk about the rest of the hardware. Okay, so hardware, bye MediaTek Helio, and hello Qualcomm Snapdragon 630. It's got an Adreno 508 GPU, 4GB of RAM, and 32 or 64GB of storage. And of those 32, we have 30GB used by the system. There's microSD card slot, and luckily no lag no matter what you do, no matter how many apps are open in the background. Of course, more than 3 usually. You'll be happy with the fluidity of the device and whatever you're doing. I also performed some updates and things worked like a charm, so I'm happy to inform you, no lag, no problem here. We also tested some games. We played the new Shadowgun Legends, which is a first-person shooter with kick-ass graphics and looked fine, but also Riptide GP Renegade, which is our usual benchmark game, and also performed well. Snapdragon 630, good enough for the Zenfone 5 Lite, good enough for a couple of other phones. Actually, quite a few of them, quite a few mid-rangers have used it lately. A worthy successor for the Snapdragon 625, which is still being used by many phones. Coupled with 4GB of RAM, you should be able to run Android P easily. After Android O comes Android P, obviously. Okay, so this is Riptide, and this is a lovely frame rate. No stutter, no lag, no problem. Lovely water drops. Texture of the water is mint. High frame rate, good graphics, pretty lighting, effects, and shadows. Okay, we're done with the graphics and also with the gaming. Let's talk a bit about the benchmarks. We have screenshots for those, so let's see how those panned out. So as usual, we did a battery of tests. We did Antutu, Geekbench, you know the drill. So let me look for Antutu here. This is probably Antutu 6, and in this test we were able to score above the Huawei P10 Lite and the Sony Xperia XA1, but we scored below the Motorola Moto Z Play and the Motorola Moto Z2 Play. We also did Antutu 7, and in Antutu 7, let's see, which one is it? One of the many tests we have here. Well, you should know that in Antutu 7 we were able to score above the Xiaomi Redmi 5 Plus but below the HTC U11 Live. And then we pulled off Geekbench 4, which is this one here, and in the multi-core test we beat the surprise Google Pixel XL and OnePlus 3, not bad, but scored below the Galaxy A8 2018 and the Huawei Honor 8, which is kind of old to be honest. We also did a bunch of graphical benchmarks. I'm talking about 3D Mark, Slingshot, you know the drill, did them all, they're here somewhere. So in Slingshot we were able to score, I would say modestly. While we did beat the Huawei P9 Plus and the Huawei Mate 8, we scored below the LG Nexus 5X, which is not exactly a compliment. I honestly expected a bit more from the results of the phone, well, at least in the graphics department, which is not very impressive, but in the end it's below the Xperia XA2 Ultra in some tests, which is a bit shocking. There were actually 3 tests where it was below the last year model. Well, in the end it should fit somewhere around the Huawei P10 Lite and obviously below the Samsung Galaxy A8 2018. We also did a bunch of temperature tests, and here they are. We achieved 39.7 degrees Celsius after running the game so before Riptide. It may seem close to overheating, it's actually not in real life. And when we run GFX Bench, 34.4 degrees, and once again it's reasonable and there's no overheating. When it comes to the battery, finally a good capacity we got here. So the predecessor had a measly 2700 mAh battery, the Xperia XA2 Ultra. This one a beefy 3580 mAh unit with Qnovo adaptive charge, stamina, quick charge, you know the drill. And now let's see some results for this big 3580 mAh battery. So we go here, and as usual we tested first the HD video playback in a loop with a pretty solid result. Oh, by the way, this is the Antutu 7 I was looking for. You find it when you don't need it. I'm going to say this: 15 hours of continuous HD video playback. Yes, 15, which is pretty amazing in my book. Don't know about your book, but I'm pretty happy with the results. So at 15 hours and 17 minutes of playback, it's actually placed on the 10th spot. It beats the Galaxy S7 Edge, the Huawei P10, Galaxy S8, and a bunch of other phones. So we're very happy with that result. And it scores below the Motorola Moto Z Play, I know, and also the Asus Zenfone Zoom S. You'll find the result for yourself once the text review is done. What's even more impressive is this one. The PC Mark result is crazy. 12 hours and 3 minutes. It's actually the 8th placed phone all time. I've tested about 200-300 phones, and here it is, 8th placed. Beats Galaxy S8, Galaxy A8 2018, beats the predecessor XA2 Ultra, which was pretty good itself. Still scores below the gigantic Galaxy A3 2017 and below the Motorola Moto Z Play. Charging is a bit on the long side. It's a worthy sacrifice. 3 hours and 8 minutes. I expected it, but it's still quite big. At least it's better than the iPhone 7 Plus one. And after 30 minutes you're at 25%, after 1 hour you're at 50%. That's how the charging goes. Now if you want to talk about the battery settings, you go here. You got your typical stamina mode and ultra stamina mode. This will disable some features like background apps and some vibrations, and here ultra stamina, which only lets these apps work for a minimalistic experience. There is battery care for prolonged battery use, so if you leave the phone overnight to charge, this protects it from overcharging. In the end, I'm very happy with the battery. You can buy this phone alone for the battery, and that says a lot about it. Now let's talk about the acoustics. Okay, so the acoustics, I was shocked by the fact that you do not have stereo acoustics. You just have this speaker here at the bottom, and while this one at the top looks like it's a part of a dual stereo system, well, it's actually not, just an illusion, it's just the earpiece. Even the Nokia 6 has such things, so sad that we don't see stereo acoustics here. Anyways, luckily the speaker isn't easy to cover with your hand. In landscape mode, it escapes the coverage of your hand like this, so things are rather nice. Now, if you're wondering about the acoustic settings, they're here, maybe not as complex as on a flagship Xperia, but still here. So we got clear audio plus, got a bunch of effects, got the equalizer, got the genres, treble boost, bass boost, rock, pop, jazz, 5 custom channels, clear bass, surround sound with a bunch of studio, concert and the whole options. And then we got the sound effects, you already saw them, and a dynamic normalizer, and then the accessory settings with wireless playback, and that's about it. Now, if you want to do the music playback, of course, you have this separate music player with the Spotify integration. Well, it should be here somewhere, I don't actually see it, so maybe not exactly Spotify integration. Okay, audio settings are the same, and now I guess it's time to actually listen to some tunes. Okay, conclusion, I would have to say that there's a bit of a vibration at the back of the phone. There's no distortion even at the top volume. The volume is high, the bass is okay. The high notes are very good. I noticed that especially in synths and guitars. The things are very loud here and very crisp, so only pluses. Even though we have a singular speaker, it handles things like a champ. Now let's see how we did in a decibel meter test. We actually did a bunch of those. We achieved 88 decibels with our typical sample at the back and at the front of the phone. It beats even the Google Pixel 2 XL, the Sony Xperia XA2 Ultra and the Xiaomi Mi A1, but scores below the BlackBerry Passport. We also did some tests with Riptide and the result was huge, 101.5 decibels. It's actually placed on the 5th spot all time. It beats the predecessor XA1 Ultra, beats the Galaxy Note 8, but scores below the Nokia 8. Now we're done with the acoustics. We regret the lack of stereo speakers, but it performs well. There's no headphones bundled with the phone, but we do have FM radio and an audio jack in case you need it. Now on the camera front, there are a lot of things to cover. First things, at the back, singular camera, 23 megapixels, hybrid autofocus and LED flash, 5x clear image zoom, steady shot and 4K video. At the front is the real kicker. We have two sensors here. We got a 16 megapixel with optical image stabilization and an 8 megapixel too with 120-degree lens. Actually, I may be wrong about them. This may be the one with the big lens since you can actually see it. Anyways, 16 and 8 megapixels, OIS, 120 degrees, super wide angle and LED flash for brighter selfies. And by the way, the front camera has steady shot as well. Firing up the camera, you'll find the typical interface you're so accustomed to. And by the way, the camera app starts up pretty slow, picture taking pretty slow, and also the zoom is, well, I would say okay, at least the focus is accurate and quite fast, and also the exposure change. The manual mode brings white balance, exposure, ISO, shutter, focus and metering. Also we have HDR, resolution, object tracking, auto capture and so forth. If you want to do video, you're going to do it in this, video. You're going to do it in these resolutions, Full HD at 30 or 60 frames per second. There's HDR video as well. There's 4K here, separately panorama and time shift, and also slow motion at 120 frames per second. Looking quite fine, I might add. In the selfie area, you can opt for the normal lens or the wide angle lens, which is a bit of a fisheye effect. You'll see that in a minute, and that's the things that the device has to offer as far as the camera interface goes. Now we're going to go to the gallery and see how the phone actually did in our long photo taking sessions, which may or may not include a bunch of food and also some pretty nice sights from probably the last snow of the winter. So the thing to remember and to notice here from the start, a ton of details. Of course, the high megapixel count actuates a ton of details. You can zoom in on this screen, you can zoom it on the PC, you can zoom in on the spot. You'll be happy with the details at all time. Also, the clarity was good, but I felt that the brightness should have been much higher. I actually messed around with the exposure to get the proper one. I spent most of the time taking shots in manual with a +1 exposure to actually get something decent, because it was a cloudy day, but come on, I wanted more light out of the pictures. At least the clarity is good and the colors were spot on. There was no color deformation, no color degradation or overexposure. And very nice close-ups. You can actually get very close. I've noticed that from the past 2 years that Sony has been letting you take closer close-ups than other companies out there. I'm talking about flagships and also mid-rangers. Look at this, the little bear. You can even create a sort of bokeh by getting so close. Very good clarity, realistic colors and close-ups, and no blur whatsoever. We have a bunch more shots here. These are brighter because we messed around with the exposure. Okay, let's see. More colorful shots. Great clarity, great details and great focus. Here we put the HDR to the task. I feel that the HDR shots, because of the snow, are a bit too vibrant to be considered realistic. And check out these zoom tests. So normal level, nothing zoomed, zoom level 1, zoom level 2 and zoom level 3 with excellent level of details, and even zoom level 4, keeping it really crazy with those details. We have a bunch of landscape shots. We also have a pretty generous panorama with 21,696 over 3456 pixels. It's quite good in my book, and the curvature was not big, so I left the selfies for last, and here they are. Honestly speaking, I was expecting a bit more from a dual camera system. When I met the Galaxy A8 2018, I was actually first underwhelmed, and then I actually got to love the dual camera here. I'm not a big fan of the fisheye with the front cam, and I also feel that the clarity of the face is okay, but just okay. It's not exactly crazy okay like I've seen on other phones, like for example the Xperia XA2 had an excellent selfie, and shockingly this one is able to capture very nice backgrounds behind me, but my face, well, I've seen clearer on other phones. I know it's a selfie phone, but somehow not hugely impressive. So if I start to zoom in, at the first zoom you can notice a lack of clarity of the face. I suggest you remove the soft skin option because you look like a doll. Without the soft skin, I would have to say that the skin is pretty natural, pretty solid colors, and you can see all the skin pores. And I also suggest you mess around with the exposure a bit so you can get brighter and cleaner shots. So good details, good brightness, good clarity and crazy good backgrounds, but I wanted the face to be a bit clearer. I'm not saying the selfies are bad, by no means, but I've seen phones that do them better. Overall, I have to say that this device beats the predecessor, the Xperia XA2 Ultra, by about 10 up to 20%. It takes better selfies for sure. It catches a lot of details, and I mean a lot. These are some indoor shots of food. The main problem it has is that it doesn't capture as much light. You will feel tempted to use the manual mode and turn up the exposure. It's in the same vein as the Huawei P10 Lite, and it can fight the Zenfone 3, but that's about it. It's below the Samsung Galaxy A8 2018, selfies included. So this is the daytime capture. We got low light capture as well, and it's a bit disappointing. If you look at the top where the sky is, well, of course on the PC, not here, you will not see here, there's a lot of blue. There's a lot of blue hue, which is annoying. Also the flash is kind of strange, brings extra blue to the scene. A lot of blue here when you turn on the flash. The details are excellent, just like during the day. We captured a very nice shot where you can actually see the water on the street here. You can actually see the texture of water on top of the street pavement, which is very, very nice. The street light halos are, I would say, medium. They're not huge, but they have a sort of ghostly effect around them. Not very happy with that. I'm happy with the colors though, aside from the blue, weirdly blue sky, the weirdly blue that appeared during the flash. Good clarity, good colors, and even, I would say, even the brightness is quite okay. Was not underwhelmed by the brightness as I was during the day. So too bad for the blue sky, otherwise things are quite fine. Compared to the day, things are actually quite fine. Some ghostly halos, and I actually went back to last summer when I used the Xperia XA2 Ultra. This is a total upgrade. That one had blur, that one had a weird yellow. So when it comes to low light, it's a big evolution, something like 40%. Yes, that big of an evolution in the low light compared to the predecessor. So the selfies have basically stayed the same, because some selfies from last year were pretty good, but the upgrade at night is visible, and also the level of detail is crazy for a mid-range phone. Okay, we're done with the pictures. Let's go and see some videos. Okay, so as far as the video is concerned, we got the video section here, so let's check out the clips we recorded. I'm going to start off with the daytime capture in MP4 Full HD, 30 frames per second and 20 mega per second, and here we go. So let's take them one by one. I'm going to start with obviously the camera. Here we go, trying to see which one comes first. So we got this one here first. Let's play it. As you can see, it's a bit dark, which you can also find on the PC, and throughout the filming I noticed something. It's very easy to cover up the microphone by mistake, and that will happen a lot. It will also generate some echoey acoustics, which I did not dig. I was actually let down by the zoom a little bit compared to what we saw in the photo section, so the details are not exactly impressive. Things are echoey, we lose details, but the clarity was okay in general. This device cannot handle the wind quite well. I'm talking about the microphone, of course. The colors are pretty okay calibrated. By the way, there's absolutely no problem with the focus or the exposure change, so that's solved. Good focus, okay colors, crisp image in general, but a bit dark, just as I said before, for the pics. Okay, so here somewhere we should also have a 4K clip. Yes, it's this one. I figured it out because it's a 200 megabyte clip, and I actually happened to see a dog who was afraid to climb some stairs with the snow on them. Cute little dog being all clumsy on the stairs. It's shot in 4K, it's very clear and crisp, still a bit dark, but in my view perfect clarity, and I would say flagship level clarity. Good details, excellent lighting, and nice colors. Okay, so we're done with this clip. Now let's see something in motion now. So we walked around and we tested the famous steady shot stabilization. I actually loved steady shot last year on the Xperia XZ1, also XZ1 compact, and here we are again. Not exactly the same level as steady shot, but still stabilizing the image quite well. Pretty impressed by it. Okay, we kept walking around in the snow. Okay, so this was the test of the back camera. One more shot here, bunch of ducks, and we also tested the slow motion feature, which is probably best seen on the PC. Let's see this here. Not exactly the super slow motion that you got accustomed to, but still 120 frames per second is not that bad. And yes, we also have some front camera videos, because this is a powerful selfie phone, and as such it should be used by vloggers. And here we go. So I actually picked the camera one by one. I'm guessing this is the regular camera, so not the wide angle one. Stabilization is quite okay. I would say quite okay, not perfect. The focus on the face seems to be lost at times, but the background is surprisingly clear. Now, when we shot with the wide angle one, I was actually shocked by the quality of the video. The sound, well, again, not very impressive. This time the face looks better. I think this is the wide angle camera. You can see the curvature behind me. I'm happy with the face texture, the background texture, everything, so vloggers will be happy, but only if they use the wider angle camera. That's my suggestion. And by the way, even the stabilization seems to be a bit better. From what I know, one of the two front camera has OIS, and this contributes to it. So in the end, I have to say that aside from the darkness and the surprising lack of details, I would say I'm pretty happy with the capture. And here we have a standard indoor video followed by a comparison HDR video, which is a bit too white. The same scenery, but extra white, so that's what HDR does. In the end, I feel that the video capture overall beats the Huawei Lite phones, and it can easily fight on par with the Samsung Galaxy A8 2018, which we kept comparing to this phone. The only lacks are the darkness and also the lack of details. Now, when it comes to the low light capture, it's simple because you only have 3 captures and they go like this. There's a bit of a bummer here. Too much blue, lots of grain. It reminds me of the body, if I remember correctly, maybe the Xperia X Performance or maybe the Xperia XZ. One of them had a lot of grain and a lot of blue near the top, near the sky section. Okay, so this is video number 1. Number 2 also brings forth some object tracking, some streetlight halos which are a bit too big. I would say reasonable details, but the blurriness of it contradicts me. Okay, and finally the last video, the one where you also start moving a bit. So stabilization is decent, maybe not as good as during the day, but still decent. I would have to say that it beats what the Xperia XA2 Ultra offered last year. I went back to those videos and this is clearly better. The color calibration, the clarity, the details, everything is much better now. And overall it's slightly below the Samsung Galaxy A8 2018, but clearly above what Huawei is offering in the mid-range area. So if they got rid of that blue grain, the sky area, things would be perfect. So I have to say I'm a bit more impressed by the video than maybe by the selfies overall. Okay, we're done with the cameras. Let's talk about the web browser. Obviously we're dealing with Chrome here, good old Chrome. Let's load up gsm.com. Here we go. Not the fastest in the world, in spite of having some pretty decent results. I would say mid-level benchmarks, SunSpider, Velamo and so forth. For input we got here Swift key with swipe included, pretty comfy, pretty well spaced buttons. And then we talk about connectivity. So we've got here an USB Type-C port at the bottom. We also have the dual SIM version of the phone. There's also single SIM version, obviously, with nano SIM card slots. There's LTE category 13 or category 12, depending on the part of the globe you're in. And we also have GPS, GLONASS, Miracast, Bluetooth 5.0, Google Cast, NFC, Wi-Fi, ABGN. The calls were pretty loud and pretty clear, if you ask me, actually very loud, and the noise cancelling worked like a charm. Now we also did a bunch of speed tests and let's see how those panned out. So we go here, folders, and here we have them. Quite good results. So on Wi-Fi we scored up to 269 megabits in downloads, not bad, 25 megabits in uploads, and on 4G 112 megabits downloads and 46 megabits uploads. Now that we're done with the connectivity, time to talk about the OS, UI and applications. If you've seen a Sony Xperia device over the past year, I'm sure you're familiar with the way Android works and functions with Xperia UI on top of Oreo. It's Android 8.0.0 Oreo here with Xperia UI on top, as usual pretty glossy, pretty fancy, and reminding many people, including myself, of the PlayStation interface. Now when it comes to the multitasking, we got the typical carousel. You can see here I also have split screen, so you can use two parts of the screen to divide your activities. On the one hand you can maybe watch some videos, on the other you can do browsing. That's one example of this split screen thing. So pretty clear and glossy user interface. It's typical if you're accustomed to the Xperia vibe. Keep the home screen pressed and you got your typical widgets. Now even more minimalistic and white. Okay, wallpapers, once again similar to the PlayStation 1, there's a bunch of themes, some of them even for pay and custom related to movies, games and things like that. Transitions, grid and settings like Google Feed, app recommendations, auto rotate, icon size, remove duplicates, quick add icons and so forth. Here you can find the Google Feed, and then let's see what else. In the drop down portion, as usual, notifications, and of course there is also quick settings. And as usual for Android Oreo, these icons are very little, so if you want to get to the settings you may be fumbling around a bit. Now at the back you can find the fingerprint scanner, which is an approach that Sony hasn't taken very often with its Xperias. They prefer to put a fingerprint scanner here within the power button, basically everywhere but not the back side. Now we have it at the back and we are quick to test it. So first let's see what unusual settings we have here. So connectivity, appearance, apps, battery, display, sound, storage, one-handed operation. Let's see what that is. Resize screen, you just do that and you can use it with a single hand. Optimized apps, okay, lock screen and security, user and accounts, and that's about it. Those are all the special features. Here we go. Lock screen, fingerprint manager, next, security with a pin. Preferably use one better than mine. Okay, so here we go. Put the finger here and in about something like 12 or 14 steps we should be about done. We are indeed. And let's see how efficient it is. So put the finger here, it's unlocked. Not as fast as on a flagship, there's a millisecond or two less. Let's try again, here we go. At 90 degrees, took a while longer but still worked. 180 degrees. There's a very strong vibration when the phone detects your finger. So not as fast and snappy as the flagship ones, but still pretty precise. Okay, so that's how the authentication works. There's also something called Smart Lock with on-body detection, trusted places, face recognition and voice matching. And I would have to say they work pretty good. So let's maybe try them out. So lock screen and security, Smart Lock, pin, on-body detection, trusted places, trusted devices and trusted face. We actually have a trusted face recorded here. You can improve it and you can remove it, so an extra layer of security is available on this device. Well, other than that, I guess it's time to talk about the pre-installed applications. Luckily, there is not many of them, there's no bloatware, so we got something like 32 pre-installed apps, which is rather okay in my book. You can find here useful things like the AVG protection, antivirus. We got the usual Google package, familiar. We also have the Amazon apps, shopping and Kindle. There's music, album, video, Xperia Lounge, FM radio. I failed to see the PlayStation app, don't know where it went, but I guess you can download it. We got files, your new Google operated file manager, Facebook of course, and a bunch more like video and TV side view, for example. So that's about it in a nutshell. This has been the review of the Sony Xperia XA2 Ultra. Well, Ultra indeed. It's big, has a beefy battery. Now let's see the pros and cons for actually getting such a device. So on the pro side, obviously the super battery. It's very close to being a battery phone, trust me. It's comfy considering its size. It's got a bright screen, it's got okay performance, even gaming wise. It's loud when it comes to the speaker. The photos catch a lot of details and also pretty good colors. Not bad video capture either. Good stabilization with the front and back camera and clear and almost stock OS and UI. I'm pretty sure it will be among the first phones to get Android P when the time comes, believe me. Those were the pros. Now on the cons, it's still a very heavy phone. 220 grams is a lot by today's standards. As I mentioned before, the screen feels a bit too white, especially when you're watching a video and checking out its colors. I also felt sometimes that the contrast wasn't exactly satisfactory on a winter day when the sun was not strong. I wanted more contrast. Benchmarks are a bit underwhelming in the graphical department. We do not have stereo speakers in spite of the appearance. Yes, we have one here, but this one is just the earpiece. Other than that, the selfies were inferior to the Samsung Galaxy A8 2018, and also there is that annoying blue grainy effect when shooting videos and sometimes photos at night. So in the end, this is clearly a machine for binge watching TV shows and maybe some mid to high level gaming. That's for sure, because of the crazy battery, the pretty good screen, and also the high level acoustics. I'm talking here about decibels, obviously. So binging, gaming, music, even some filming. So if you're a concert goer and a gamer and you take a lot of travels and holidays, this is a device for you. Perhaps even more than the predecessor. It improves on the predecessor in the areas filming, battery, I would say acoustics, and the screen. Well, the screen seems a bit dumped down from the model last year. It's still very bright, but not as bright. So that's it. Xperia XA2 Ultra, a big machine for big bingers and gamers. This is from gsndom.com. This would be a device for at about 8.5 or 9 out of 10. That would be the grade if we still graded phones. This is from us. Bye bye.